So is the real issue here not providing resources to refugees, but having to do it for so many? Karen Jacobsen is the acting director of the Feinstein International Center at Tufts University. She joins us now from Boston. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Karen, what about the sheer number of refugees? Does that change the economic dynamic or impact here?
Well, it does, of course. It makes a big difference whether we have a few people that are coming in at a reasonable pace, or whether we have a huge surge of people coming where it's difficult for everybody to manage them. It's difficult for the government. It's difficult for people to understand how they're going to cope. So yes, it does make a difference.
When you think about it, those who flee their countries in search of safety are motivated and typically willing to work. So are there some similar character traits that tend to define refugees?
You know, one thing I think it's important to remember is that the refugees coming especially to Europe and who are willing to make these horribly dangerous journeys are very keen to work to provide livelihoods for their families. They are not necessarily the poorest of the poor. They often have skills, they have education, they have entrepreneurial spirit. They have much to bring to the societies that welcome them. And as long as they're allowed to work and given freedom of movement rather than being put in camps, they present an opportunity to the countries that welcome them. And we've seen this in many countries that have been willing to accept refugees and let them move and work freely. Those refugees have become a benefit to people and to societies and even to governments.
It's one thing to be a refugee, it's quite another to be called a internally displaced person, and that means that you've been forced to flee your home, but you're still inside your country. There were 32 million internally displaced people last year. That's more than twice as many than refugees. So how difficult is it for these people to make a new life?
Internally displaced people face the same kinds of issues that refugees do. Much of whether they're successful in their new lives depends on how they're welcomed by the host communities or the host populations into which they move. Again, where people are welcomed, where they are able to move freely, where they are not harassed and treated badly or even imprisoned by the host population, again, internally displaced people are able to benefit the host community. They also have made horrible journeys, have had seen their families destroyed or broken up or killed and wounded, and they are trying to overcome these incredible difficulties. But again, these are, like many migrants, these are some of the most skilled and educated and willing to work people. Migrants are an asset to a society. We've seen that in the US, we see that in many countries that allow migrants. And internally displaced people and refugees are perhaps the best kind of migrants in some ways because they are so driven and so desperate to succeed.
All right, Karen Jacobsen, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate you joining us from Boston.